Okay. I'm just waiting for some people to come into the room. Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give people just a few more minutes to join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started with this evening's webinar. Oh, you changed your background, Ashley. I like
We
it.
have some options. So I like to kind of use the one that might have the best lighting at the time. Seems like that orange is a little kind of
Yeah,
like
I like the blue. I like
phasing
the
out.
blue.
Yeah.
All right, we'll wait one more minute to see if we're going to have more people to join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So, how was the weather there today? Rebecca, you're up here with me, right? Yeah. So you had a good sunshiny day.
That's good. It is still warm up there because it's still very warm down here in southern Louisiana.
Yes,
Wow.
it is. It's
I
still
think it
Very
got
warm.
up to what, 78 today? I think that was our,
Yes.
yeah, it was
nice.
very
We're
nice.
we're still
Yeah.
like in the low to mid 80s out here, so a
Mm.
little warm.
That's good. That's good. Look, we might as well just go ahead and enjoy these days while we can because they're probably going to
Yeah.
come to an end soon. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
that's true.
okay, well, we can go ahead and get started with this evening's webinar. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the April Dunn Act webinar. My name is Chanel Jackson, and I'm the Executive Director of Family Seven Families Region 7 in Northwest Louisiana. And so we cover the 9 parishes that make up Northwest Louisiana. Family Seven Families Region 7 is an information and resource center for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families. Um, we provide information and training, peer-to-peer support, and peer-to-peer support and education and training and information and referral. As a tongue twister, sometimes I say it so much you would think it just roll off like that. So I just want to thank you guys for joining us this evening. I am going to turn it over to Miss Rebecca Hansberry and also Ashley Augustine. And we're going to get this webinar started before I lose my voice again. And thank you, ladies, for joining us. And Rebecca, it is in your hands.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Looks like we have Mr. Davis, Justin Davis. Mr. Davis, we're gonna be talking about the April Dunn Act tonight. In particular, uh sort of a parent-friendly version of it. Not use I know sometimes the special education teachers in us can use all these different letters and acronyms and things of that nature. And what we've done is try to strip some of that language out. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Ashley, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Augustine, and I have the pleasure of serving on the special education team at the Department of Education. And I work really closely with Rebecca Hanrip. Can't even, now I'm having tongue twisters, right? With Rebecca Hanberry on the April Dunn Act. And yes, Justin, good evening. It's so glad to have you here this evening.
Yeah. So Justin, since it's kind of we got Monica. I know Monica Stampley. So welcome, Monica. And
Welcome.
yeah, for sure. So if either of you, it's kind of a really small venue tonight. If either of you would like to at any point in time, either A, unmute yourself, or B, you don't want to mute, you just want to stick a question in the chat box. We're going to be watching the chat box tonight, just in case you have a question. I will say that it does not offend me when I'm presenting. If you have a question, if you're anything like me, you have to ask it or you forget that you're what you have to ask, right? So please feel free to interrupt me. I will say that if you're asking a particular question, maybe about your child or a child that you're serving, um, and the question is kind of in the weeds, might want to wait till the end to discuss that. We're going to try to get this thing rolling and finished, including question and discussion within an hour. Also, Ashley and I are going to stick our email addresses in the chat so that you can email us with any questions that you have. And we can, just in case you really don't want to bring it up tonight, you want to bring it up offline, then we can have a good discussion offline, either via email or if we need to schedule a phone call, that can happen too. Let me put mine. There you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to show you the presentation that we're going to discuss tonight. It's this one right here, the April Dunn Act, A Parent Guide to Understanding the Law. Next thing I'd like to do is show you where this presentation can be found on the website. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off just to make sure that we're not interfering with any bandwidth. So if you, for some reason need to see me or want my attention, just, put it in the chat or unmute and we'll go from there. All right. So let me show you where you can find this on the DOE website. If you've never been to the new April Dunn Act library, that's where we're going. And I want to make sure you know where that is. We've worked really hard over the past 4 to 5 years to make sure that all things April Dunn are in one spot and that you can find them. So first thing you want to do is you'll see that we are at the homepage of LouisianaBelieves.com or the Louisiana Department of Education website. You're going to scroll down to the bottom, way down here at the bottom, and you're going to see where it says Students with Disabilities. You're going to click right there. Okay, so Students with Disabilities. This brings you to a pretty cool page. You're going to go all the way down. This page itself has a bunch of information. You're going to go all the way down to the bottom of this page, and you're going to see where it says right here, the Students with Disabilities Library. You're going to click on Students with Disabilities again. So Students with Disabilities, scroll down, Students with Disabilities. All right. Once you click on that, you get into what is called the Academic Library. And if you've never been to this page, there's a ton of stuff here too. So scroll down, you're going to go down about mid-page and you're going to see high school guidance. Right under high school guidance special education is the April Dunn Act resources. All right. And the presentation we're going to look at tonight is the second presentation in line right here, Parent Guide to Understanding the Law. All right. All right, so I'm going to once again share the presentation. Then we're going to get rolling. Okay. All right. So like I said, tonight, we're going to take a look at the April Dunn Act, A Parent Guide to Understanding the Law. I really want to provide a very general overview of the April Dunn Act. We always have to take a look at graduation requirements in Louisiana when we're talking about April Dunn. Knowing the graduation requirements gives you the foundation that you need to make decisions. Also, got to talk about eligibility. What does your child need to do to become eligible for the April Dunn Act and its provisions? What are individual performance criteria? We're going to talk about those a lot. How has the department taught? What is the guidance we've released related to your child's IEP team developing and applying those individual performance criteria? And how can you help your child succeed? And then finally, we're going to talk about a resource that we have for you. Okay. So let's talk about the April Dunn Act. I don't know if you know it or not, but it is a law and it was named after a Baton Rouge local. Her name was April Dunn. And she was basically a champion for students with disabilities. Originally, when this law was passed, we called it Act 833. And then we had the pandemic come along. And unfortunately, April passed away of COVID. And not long after that, it was renamed the April Dunn Act in her honor. Basically, what the law does is it allows students with disabilities that are eligible to earn a high school diploma by meeting certain graduation requirements through these individual performance criteria. And they are created by your child's IEP team. So to understand the April Dunn Act, we first have to understand what your child must do to earn a high school diploma. Because remember, this is about some of the requirements that they have to do to earn a diploma. So let's go ahead now and let's take a look at the graduation requirements in Louisiana. Basically, Louisiana currently has two choices, or what we like to call pathways, for your child to earn a diploma in the state. They can either go the university pathway or they can go the Jumpstart pathway. The university pathway is a traditional high school pathway that you and I are so familiar with. You take classes, you pass tests, you pass state tests, and then you go to a 4-year college. The Jumpstart pathway is what we call a career pathway, and it prepares your child to go to work and or continue their education at a 2-year community college. So when they leave high school, if they have gone on the Jumpstart pathway, they are ready to go to work right out of high school. We have kids that graduate with an industry-based certification. That's a certificate from the industry that they've chosen to study in, say, welding. And they go to work as a welder when they leave us. We have students that graduate with a CNA certificate and they go to work as a CNA straight out of high school. So they're taking these courses, the courses that this pathway requires, and they can either go straight to work and or they can enter a 2-year community college. And then from there, go on to a 4-year community college. Okay. So I'm gonna pause just a minute, make sure there's no questions before. What I'd like to do is take a little deeper look into these two pathways. Before we do that, though, I want to make sure there's no questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. All right, let's talk about the university pathway. This is the one where when you finish it, you go to college, 4-year college, right? So what does a student have to do to earn a diploma on this pathway? Well, first of all, they have to earn a minimum of 24 Carnegie credits. Basically, you attend a class, you get a credit, okay? A Carnegie credit. They have to score approaching basic or above on state assessments called the LEAP 2025. And the LEAP 2025 assessments are taken after certain courses, all right? For example, they have to take English 1. At the end of English 1, they will have to take a LEAP 2025, an ELA LEAP 2025, and English 1 LEAP 2025. And they have to get a certain score on it, approaching basic or above. And then whatever score they get, that's figured in as 5% of their overall grade. So there's earn a minimum of 24 Carnegie credits. So that's the class requirement, right? The credit requirement. And then there's an assessment requirement. They have to pass these state assessments. The LEAP 2025 is a state assessment. I'm not talking about the regular tests that they take on a daily basis, once they finish a chapter test or something like that. These are state assessments, and they're cumulative. So you take it over the entire course at the end of the course, all right? And used to, they would have to complete a free application for federal student aid or a FAFSA. But Ashley, I do believe that has changed, correct? They no longer have to do that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So after successful completion, your child leaves with a diploma, ready to attend a 4-year college. Okay. All right. Now, let's take a look at the Jumpstart pathway. Jumpstart's a little bit different. There's still 24 things involved, right? However, it's one of them relates to an industry-based certification. So let's dig in. So first of all, they have to earn a minimum of 23 Carnegie units. Remember, we had 24 on the university pathway. This one is 23. They still have that same assessment requirement. They have to take those LEAP 2025 assessments after certain courses. And you're like, Rebecca, what are the courses? Okay, there's 2 English, English 1 and English 2. There's 2 maths, algebra and geometry. And then there's a science and a social studies. The science is biology and the social studies is civics and or US history. It depends on, or US history depends on when they started. We just added civics to their lineup. And they have to pass one of those 2 pair. We call them a pair. So in other words, the English pair, English 1, English 2, they have to pass one of those. The math pair, the algebra, and geometry, they got to pass one of those. And then the biology, science, social studies, they have to pass one of those. All right. Now, the one extra thing that you have to do on the Jumpstart pathway, you might be looking at this and going, oh, they only have to do 23 Carnegie units. Yeah, but look at that third bullet. They have to earn a credential or what we call an industry-based certification. And y'all are probably familiar with this if you've worked in any kind of industry, like I mentioned welding earlier, or CNA, or if you're a manager at a restaurant, you've got ServSafe food manager that you had to pass. Those are industry-based certification. We call them IBCs for short, right? We love those letters. So that's the extra thing that they have to do. Yeah, they may only have 23 Carnegie units, but they also have that IBC that they have to earn. That's what prepares them to go to work right away. After successful completion, your child then leaves with a diploma, an industry-based certification, and leaves ready to go to work or to continue their education at a 2-year community college. All right, any questions? All right, let's go ahead and go forward. So, how does April Dunn affect these graduation pathways? Remember, I told you in the beginning that April Dunn gives your child's IEP team, which you and your child, depending on how old he or she is, you have a part in it, right? The IEP has the authority to make some adjustments. And where they make adjustments is to the assessment portion of the pathway, not the classes. That your child has to earn the Carnegie unit. They have to do everything that any other student has to do in that course. They just get some help where the assessment is concerned, that LEAP 2025 state assessment. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. Okay. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about what eligibility looks like. What do you have to do to become eligible for the April Dunn Act? All right. Do we have any questions? And don't worry, we're going to dig in a little more to how April Dunn affects those pathways. You're going to see clearly as we go through these slides. All right, let's go ahead and talk about eligibility. So basically, any student with a disability, except a student identified as gifted and talented and who has no other exceptionality, should be examined by IEP teams for eligibility for the April Dunn Act. Okay. By the way, I'm sorry, I should have said this up front. There's two sides to April Dunn Act. One relates to what we call the promotion, which applies to grades K through 8. The other applies to high school. All we're talking about is high school right now. It's called the graduation criteria. So there's promotion, which is for the younger kids, and then there's graduation, which is the high school kids. And that's what we're talking about tonight. So any student with a disability should be examined by IEP teams for eligibility for the April Dunn Act. Okay, so you say, well, Rebecca, well, when should an IEP team look at my child? Well, here's how eligibility is established. All right, let's talk about this. Then we're going to talk about when. So the IEP team will determine April Dunn Act eligibility when your child enters high school without achieving, that means they don't pass, the state established benchmarks on the LEAP 2025 state assessment for 2 of the 3 most recent years. Now let's press pause for a minute and we're going to talk about this. When your child's in the 6th grade, actually they start before that. They start in the 3rd. But when your child gets to the 6th grade, 7th grade, the 8th grade, they're going to still be taking LEAP 2025 state assessments, okay? They're going to take at least 4 of them. 4 of them in the 6th, 4 of them in the 7th, and 4 of them in the 8th, okay? We're taking ELA, which is English, science, social studies, and math. So each year when your child takes those assessments, I need you to be absolutely sure of what your child scored. Remember, the state benchmark is they have to achieve at least approaching basic. We're going to talk about what that state benchmark is specifically to 6th, 7th, and 8th. 6th and 7th has one set of state benchmark, and guess what? 8th has a different one. Yeah, we couldn't make it easy, right? High school, they have to at least score approaching basic. All right, so your child has taken the sixth grade assessments, 7th grade assessments, 8th grade assessments, and now it's time for them to enter high school. What your IEP team should do is they should look back on the scores in the 6th, the 7th, and 8th. That's 3 of the most recent years, right? They're entering the 9th. 3 of the most recent years is 6th, 7th, and 8th. If your child did not pass 2 of the 3 most recent years, then they're eligible for April Dunn entering high school. Now, bear with me because we're going to look at this a little closer. So that's the criteria for a student entering high school. Well, what if your child enters high school and they're not eligible? Well, there's a second provision. There's a second eligibility for criteria for eligibility. This one is the second bullet right here. Does not achieve, does not pass the state established benchmark after 2 attempts of the same LEAP 2025 high school assessment. So you see, we're no longer talking about middle school assessments now. We're talking about high school assessments. They got into the 9th grade. They were not eligible. They did great or good on their 6th and 7th and 8th grade scores, LEAP 2025 test. So they weren't eligible. But now they're in high school. This second bullet says, they go into high school, they take Algebra 1, 9th grade. That's very typical. Kid takes Algebra 1 in the 9th grade, right? Comes the end of the year, they take the LEAP 2025 Algebra 1 state assessment, and they fail it. They go through some remediation, they fail it again. Now, guess what? They have failed the same state assessment twice. They are now eligible for the April Dunn Act for the 10th grade to be applied for the rest of their high school experiences. IEP team should use this criteria for determining eligibility once the student has taken at least 1 high school state assessment. So once they take one high school LEAP 2025 test, you cannot use the middle score anymore. So you see how important it is that you as a parent know when these IEP teams are going to look at your child for eligibility and know what scores they're supposed to get. It's very important. All right. And by the way, in high school, they only have to meet eligibility once. Once they're eligible, they're always eligible for April Dunn, unless, of course, they are no longer a SPED student. All right. Any questions about eligibility? Looks like we have maybe a question. Okay. Lena says, my son is a sophomore in high school. So Lena, basically, if they looked at your son, freshman, they would have looked at your son. They should have looked at your son when he was entering the 9th grade. So after the 8th grade scores came back, they would have looked at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade scores and determined if he was eligible. If he was, then they could have applied it in the 9th grade. If he wasn't, then he probably took some LEAP 2025 state assessments at the end of his 9th grade year that could have made him eligible for April Dunn in his sophomore year. All right. So when we talk about the time, the critical time that your child should be examined, it's upon entering high school, just like we talked about right now with Lena's son, and then after each high school state assessment or each LEAP 2025 assessment. For example, Lena, if your son entered the 9th grade and he wasn't eligible for April Dunn, and he took the algebra test or the English one, that's very typical for them to take that in the 9th grade. He takes it at the end of the 9th grade and he fails English 1. Well, then he goes to summer remediation. They try to get address his weakness in English 1. And then he takes it again at the end of that summer remediation and he fails again. He's eligible all of a sudden. He can have it applied in the 10th grade. Now, let's say he doesn't fail. That's fantastic. But this process is repeated again at the end of the 10th grade year. If he passes, because he's going to take some more LEAP 2025 state assessments at the end of the 10th grade year. If he passes them, great. If he doesn't, he's remediated, takes them again, fails it the second time. Guess what? Now he became eligible in the 10th grade. This process should be repeated every time your child takes a LEAP 2025 state assessment, at a minimum. Okay. All right. We used Lena, but now I want to use Emma and Malik. I love using student examples. If you're anything like me, you really need a picture drawn for you so that you can understand. Okay. So we're going to look at 2 student examples to understand how a student becomes eligible for the April Dunn Act. Meet Emma on the left and Malik on the right. Emma is entering the 9th grade. Right away, my mind goes, we're going to use bullet number 1 back there. We're going to look at her 6th, 7th, and 8th grade scores, right? Malik's over on the right, currently a 10th grader. We're going to use Malik's LEAP 2025 state assessment that he took in the 9th grade. We're going to see how he did on that. All right. Lena said, my problem is I don't know anything about this, and I have moved him from private school to public to homeschool and private school again because he has been failing and doing poorly everywhere. Then it's a very good thing that you're here, Lena. And if you didn't, you probably did not see mine and Ashley Augustine's email address in the chat. Nope, because we put it in at 5:36 and you came in at 5:56. So I'm going to put mine in there again and then ask Ashley to do the same. Okay. Yep, she's driving and having problems with her Zoom. Yep, that's why we cut our cameras off in hopes that it would create more bandwidth for you guys that are on your phone. So, we're going to start with Emma. So Emma's in 9th grade. She's entering the 9th grade. I mean, she just finished 8th grade, right? Her IEP team must determine if she's eligible for April Dunn Act. To be eligible for April Dunn, Emma must enter high school, without having achieved the state established benchmark or the score that the state requires you to score on the LEAP 2025 state assessment for 2 of the 3 most recent years. Well, in Emma's case, her 3 most recent years are 6th, 7th, and 8th. Now, y'all, sometimes we have students that are held back. And so their 3 most recent years might be 7 and 8, 8 if they were held back in the 8th, or 7, 7, and 8. Regardless, typically the 3 most recent years are 6th, 7th, and 8th. And we never go below 6th. So in other words, we can't use 5th grade. Okay. So we gotta determine what the state benchmark is. What does the state require your child to make? What score in order to achieve or pass the LEAP 2025 state assessment? And you as a parent, you need to know that, because, and I'm going to warn you, sometimes it changes. Okay. Right now, it hasn't changed in a little bit, I think since 2017, but I think we're due for a change soon. I think there's some new, and it all has to do with Bessie and legislation and stuff like that. Okay. So to pass a LEAP 2025 state assessment in these grades, Emma has to score the following. This is a very good resource for you. Hang on to it. It's good until it's not. What do I mean by that? It's good until it changes. So always check with your teacher, one of your child's teachers or the counselor at the high school. Hey, what are have the state benchmarks changed on what my child has to do to pass that LEAP 2025 test? So in 6th and 7th grade, there's 4 assessments: ELA, math, science, social studies. We care about these 4, right? They have to score at least a basic on 2. It doesn't matter which 2. They have to get basic on 2 of the 4. If they get basic on 2 of the 4, they pass. Got it? In 8th grade, a little different. They have to get a combination of a basic and approaching basic in either ELA or math. Well, what does that mean? Here's an example. Your child would score an AB, approaching basic, on the ELA assessment and basic on the math. They're good. They passed. Or vice versa. They scored an approaching basic on the math and a basic on the ELA. They passed. Okay? If you'll notice, we're only focused on ELA and math in the 8th grade. So this is the state benchmark, right? Okay, so let's look at Emma. Here's what Emma did. In the 6th grade, unsat ELA, basic math, approaching basic science, approaching basic social studies. Did she get 2 basics? No, she did not. So she did not achieve the score required by the state. So remember, we're looking for 2 of the 3 years. For April Dunn, we got 2 of the 3 years where she didn't meet eligibility. So this is one of them. 7th grade, Emma, unsat ELA, approaching basic math, basic science, basic social studies. I heard 2 basics. So she achieved the score required by the state here. She's good. Check. This does not count toward 1 of the 2 for eligibility for April Dunn. But in the 8th grade, she got unsatisfactory on ELA, approaching basic on math. What was she supposed to get? Approaching basic combination. Did she get that? No, she didn't. She got unsatisfactory and approaching basic. So guess what? She did not meet the state benchmark. Therefore, this is the 2nd year of the 3 that she did not meet state benchmark. Guess what? Emma's eligible for April Dunn. The IEP team found Emma did not meet, she didn't pass the state benchmark on the LEAP 2025 state assessment in 2 of the 3 most recent years. She didn't pass it in 6th, and she didn't pass it in 8th. Therefore, Emma is eligible for the April Dunn Act. Okay, any questions about that? All right, now let's look at Malik. Malik's a student that's entering the 10th grade. Unlike Emma, he was not eligible for April Dunn when he entered the 9th grade. His IEP team looked at him. They looked at 6th, 7th, and 8th, and he did good. He made state benchmark. He wasn't eligible. So he came on into high school without having April Dunn. Since entering high school, he has taken at least one LEAP 2025 state assessment. And remember, the rule is once he takes one, we use that other criteria. So at the end of the 9th grade, he took a LEAP 2025 high school assessment. His IEP team checked him for eligibility after these tests. At the end of the 9th grade, he took LEAP 2025 Algebra 1 assessment. The IEP team found that he scored unsatisfactory on this assessment. So Malik took summer remediation. After summer remediation, he again took the LEAP 2025 Algebra 1 assessment. And again, he scored unsatisfactory. So because he did not achieve or achieve the state benchmark after 2 attempts of the same state assessment, he is now eligible for the April Dunn Act. Okay. So from Emma and Mike, we see here that there are different times a student can be examined for eligibility. Emma was examined upon entering high school prior to the 9th. Malik was examined upon entering high school, found ineligible. Then he was examined again when he was in high school and took a state assessment. At a minimum, your child's IEP team should examine eligibility at these points. Any questions? All right, let's talk individual performance criteria. What are they? Why are we even talking about these words? For a student with a disability eligible for the April Dunn Act, the IEP team can develop individual performance criteria or goals and objectives for the courses your child is taking. Now, they're not applied to the course. That's very important for you to understand. They are applied to a state assessment. Okay? This is a provision for state assessments. April Dunn, the lady that we talked about in the beginning, had great difficulty passing standardized state test. Research shows that there's a pretty good chance your child may have trouble with a standardized test. I'm not talking about the test the teacher makes. I'm talking about these state tests. They're challenging for kids with disabilities. So the IEP team is able to create goals and objectives that address that assessment, address all the scope and sequence of the entire course. That doesn't, okay? So individual performance criteria or goals and objectives that the IEP team create, if your child's eligible, allows the student to show that they've mastered the course content through an alternate means. By alternate means, I mean, might be a portfolio, might be a project, might be a art project. It might be acting out a scene. These individual performance criteria are expressed in goals and objectives. Y'all, what we're trying to do is really talk to districts and make sure, and IEP teams, and make sure they understand that the best way to create performance criteria is to make sure you address the content of the course, right? The goals and objectives should address the scope and sequence or everything about the course, just like the test does. But instead of having to pass the test, because the kids have trouble with standardized tests, they have to achieve these goals and objectives. If they achieve the goals and objectives, then for the purposes of graduation, they achieve that state assessment requirement. Remember the state assessment requirement we talked about? That's required on diploma pathways. If they achieve their goals and objectives, then they achieve the state assessment requirements for that course. All right. Now, your child still has to attempt the LEAP 2025 state assessments. This also applies to the industry-based certification if they go on the Jumpstart pathway. All right. So, but they still have to take the state assessment. They still have to take the IBC. If it's applied to the industry-based certification and your child doesn't pass the IBC, but achieves these goals and objectives, for graduation, they can check off that IBC requirement, but they don't get the IBC. Okay? They can only get that IBC by meeting industry standard. The April Dunn Act does not give the IEP team the authority to compromise the standards or the requirements of any course. It's very important that you guys understand that, because if you're facing putting your child, possibly applying April Dunn to your child's experiences in high school, you don't want your child's education compromised. And the April Dunn does not give an IEP team the authority to compromise your child's high school experience, okay? IEP teams are expected to develop these goals and objectives that address the entire course. And they are expected to maintain the rigor and expectations of academic achievement. Your child must achieve the requirements of the course, okay? So April Dunn's not applied to the course. I think I've said that plenty of times, but I just want to get that through. It's only applied to that assessment requirement. Now, if you feel the IEP team has failed to create rigorous individual performance criteria, we need you to speak up. Say something. Say, no, my child deserves a good education and we're not going to compromise it. Okay? And I'm going to show you a resource at the end of this presentation where you can go and look at sample performance criteria that the department developed. So now, speaking of which, let's talk about developing and applying individual performance criteria. Before we do that, I'm going to go to the next slide, but I want to know if there's any questions. Okay, developing and applying individual performance criteria, or we said already, these are also goals and objectives. So the IEP team is responsible for developing individual performance criteria for a certain course that your child is taking during the upcoming school year. The following key people should be in attendance at that IEP meeting: an administrator, teacher of the course, wherein April Dunn Act is being applied, special education teacher, IEP holder, and you and your child. All right. So when creating these goals and objectives, IEP team members should collaborate with all the teachers, determine strategies and supports that your child will need. And these goals and objectives shouldn't be written any different. They should have the same integrity as any other goals and objectives that we expect to be written with measurable. They have to be measurable. They reflect strategies and supports discussed with the teacher. They're goal-aligned objectives. In other words, when they achieve those objectives, they roll up to achieve the goal. They have to maintain rigor. They have to be aligned to the English 1 course or Algebra 1 course. Yeah, I mean, you can't align. For example, if your child is going to take Algebra 1 and he's eligible for April Dunn, and you sit down with the IEP team and you say, okay, let's develop some goals and objectives so that when he faces that assessment at the end of this course, he's prepared. If he doesn't pass that assessment, he will make goals and objectives and he can achieve these. Then for the purposes of graduation, bam, he's accomplished that state assessment requirement. Okay. They have to be aligned to Algebra 1. They can't be aligned to financial literacy. So the goals and objectives have to be developed within the first 30 days of the student entering the course. In reality, they have to be applied within the first 30 days of the student entering the course, okay? So the student's eligible, they start August 1. By August, all right, let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. By August 31st, those goals and objectives better be in place. If not, that's not good. So that's a very critical thing for you to remember. If goals and objectives are going to be created and applied for April Dunn, it has to be done within the first 30 days of that student walking through the door of that course. And that's those 30 days, the law does not say whether they're calendar or whether they're school days. That's up for the district, the IEP team to decide. Okay. So now that we've talked about developing the goals and objectives, now you're probably going, Rebecca, how do we even know like what courses to apply April Dunn to? Well, I'm going to tell you up front, you can apply April Dunn to any course. But remember, the student has to pass the course. So why would you apply April Dunn to art? There's no state assessment associated with art. Why would you apply to PE? There's no state LEAP 2025 assessment associated with PE. The state assessments are only associated with those classes that I told you about earlier. English 1, English 2, Algebra 1, Geometry, Biology, Civics, US History. Okay? So when choosing where to apply and where not to apply, you have to look at your child and you have to say, where is my child's strengths and weaknesses relative to his disability? So let's say he's very much has a weakness in math. Well, I would definitely apply April Dunn to algebra and geometry if he's eligible for April Dunn. Let's say he's strong in math. He's very weak in English. Then I would apply it in English. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't apply it in math. However, you could apply it as a safety net just in case he doesn't do well on that LEAP 2025 standardized state test. Okay? But look at the data. Sit down with the teacher and the IEP team and say, I want to see his state assessment scores in the past. I want to see how he did on math when he was in 6th, 7th, and 8th. Not that we're determining eligibility. We're just looking at data. I want to see how he performed on student learning targets in algebra, in geometry last year. How'd he do? What is his grades? All right. Use data to help you make those decisions. And if you're not familiar with the data, reach out to your IEP team and say, I want some data. I want to look at the data to help us make a decision about where we're going to apply. You can also look at the IGP. Every high school student should have what's called an individual graduation plan. That's where that child's 4 years of high school are laid out on a piece of paper. He's going to take, just like when you went to college, you said, hey, I want to be a teacher. So they said, okay, freshman year, you got to take this. Sophomore year, you got to take this. Junior year, you take this. Senior year, you take this, right? Everything's lined out. And if your child is Jumpstart, the IBC is listed on there too. You determine by a course-by-course basis if individual performance criteria should be established. Any questions? I know I'm going just a tad bit fast. It's 6:20. I want to make sure that we get through this and allow time for questions. So as a parent of a child with a disability, there are some, like what I like to call action steps that you can take to ensure your child is examined for eligibility for the April Dunn Act, and the IEP team applies the provisions in a timely manner while upholding rigorous and high expectations. So those are the two things that are really, really critical for you to look at. They're examined on time and it's applied on time, and that we're going to uphold the rigor and high expectation. Action step number 1. Know when your child should be examined for eligibility. And we talked about this upon entering the 9th grade, and then once they're in high school, after they take any LEAP 2025 state assessment. Now, don't forget, if they became eligible in the 9th grade, then you don't really need bullet number 2. If they entered the 9th grade ineligible, then you're going to need bullet number 2. Be prepared to discuss your child's eligibility for the April Dunn Act when they're entering the 9th grade, like Emma. And then if your child's not eligible, be prepared to re-examine eligibility each time your child takes a high school state assessment. If your child's IEP team does not discuss the April Dunn Act, please ask about the law and when your child will be examined. Here's action step number 2. Know your child's assessment scores. Your child meets eligibility for the April Dunn Act when they enter high school without achieving the state established benchmark or passing the LEAP 2025 state assessments for 2 of the 3 most recent school years. Know what they have to do to pass. What is pass? And know what their scores are. The other one is they do not achieve the state established benchmark after 2 attempts of the same LEAP 2025 high school state assessment. And remember, once they take a state assessment in high school, can't go back and use those middle school scores any longer. So if they miss eligibility for your child based on the middle school scores, once they take a high school assessment, they can't use it anymore. They can't use those other scores. Eligibility is based on LEAP state assessment scores. Knowing the scores your child makes on the LEAP 2025 state assessment beginning in the 6th grade would be very useful information to bring to an IEP meeting to discuss eligibility for the April Dunn Act when they're entering the 9th. So know action step 3, know when the April Dunn Act must be applied to your child's courses. The law requires April Dunn to be applied to a course within the first 30 days of a student entering the course. It's extremely important that your child's IEP team review eligibility for the law and establish alternate means or goals and objectives prior to this 30-day deadline. And then action step 4, review those performance criteria, review those goals and objectives to ensure that they maintain the rigor and high expectations required of any other student. The April Dunn Act does not give IEP teams the authority to compromise the standards or requirements of any course. Your child has to pass the course. They have to get the grade like anybody else does. IEP teams are expected to develop goals and objectives that address the entire course. Remember, we talked about how it's got to address, just like the test, the LEAP 2025 test everything about that course. So should these goals and objectives. Doesn't mean there needs to be 500 goals and objectives. Like I said, I'm going to show you a document in a minute that has some really good examples of some goals and objectives or individual performance criteria. You're going to make sure they maintain rigor and expectation on academic achievement and that they do not compromise the standards of the course. Let's take a look real quick at a resource for you. It is called the April Dunn Act, Alternate Means to Graduation for Students with a Disability. It is in the Students with Disabilities Library. We do have step-by-step guide. However, this is old. You can't get there like this any longer. Pretty sure I put the other way. I hope I did. No, I didn't. But I will show you this. See this? I showed you at the very beginning of this presentation how to get to this area right here, April Dunn Act resources. If I have time after your questions, I'll show you one more time. So any questions or comments? It is 6:25. I want it to be very considerate of your time. I know we're supposed to end at 6:30. I'm very willing to stay a little longer if someone needs. If not, we did include our email addresses. You can email Ashley and me anytime, and we will respond to your email. If we need to, we'll set up a call with you. So Lena says, my son has specific disability in math and reading comprehension, but he has passed English 1. He is passing English 2. He barely passed algebra and he is failing geometry. I guess there is not a way to do anything with April Dunn. Not as far as the course is concerned. He's in private school also, but we have been talking about going back to public because my 6th grader is having big problems too. My sophomore had IEP for 6th and 7th grade for high school and public school okay. Yeah, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He probably doesn't have an IEP right now in private school, does he? He might. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, okay. Unfortunately, they can't apply. It's not applied. Do the tax reforms the governor is proposing affect any of this? Angela, I'm not sure that I understand your question. Because I'm not sure I understand what tax reforms. I mean, April Dunn Act is a law, so and a law that doesn't have anything to do with tax reforms. But I might not be understanding your question. If you'd like to either unmute or go ahead and put a little bit more explanation in the chat, you can. Lena, 504 cannot use April Dunn Act, only 1508. So it wouldn't apply to your son. Angela said she will email me. That sounds good. So, Lena, I think what you're saying is you paid $2,600 for an evaluation for 504. And unfortunately, I mean, if he is 504, I mean, that's what he is. But unfortunately, the only students that can be examined for eligibility for the April Dunn Act are those that have IEPs or fall under the provisions of, and you can look it up, RS. I can't remember the rest of the numbers there for that regulation. Not 504 students. I need to read about it and get more information to understand and get help from my middle child. Yep. Now, you said your middle child is in middle school? My middle child? Because, yeah, sixth grader? Okay. Yeah. When your middle child starts to go into the ninth grade, that's when these provisions, remember, this is high school criteria. There's also promotion, but promotion really hasn't been used in a long time. Promotion was passed as a law, the April Dunn Act promotion criteria instead of the graduation criteria. Remember, we're talking about graduation criteria. But the promotion criteria applies to grades K through 8, and it hasn't really been used a lot because there hasn't been that state requirement that a child pass in order to go to the next grade. And most of the time, a district's own regs can handle. I forgot what they're called. Sorry. No, you're more than welcome, Lena. Okay, any more questions? So it's 6:29. What I'd like to do is stop sharing real quick. And I'd like to share one more time real quick. I'd like to show you how to get to these provisions. I'm going to go back here to Louisiana Believes, right? This is louisianabelieves.com, the homepage of Louisiana Department of Education. We're going to scroll down this page. We're going to go to where it says right here, bottom right-hand corner, students with disabilities. We're going to click on that. Then guess what? We're going to go down again, way down at the bottom, right-hand side, students with disabilities again. All right. Then we're going to go to the middle of this page. And when you get there, there's the April Dunn Act resources. So students with disabilities, right in the middle of the page, the third page, April Dunn Act resources. All right. Okay. We are done. If I'd like to hand this over to Chanel. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. Other than that, you've got our email addresses and you can email us offline.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca and Ashley. And if you guys do have any questions, then definitely feel free to email Rebecca and Ashley. I've been working with Rebecca for years. She's been doing this for years. She is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to transition in the April Dunn Act. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to her offline if you have any questions. Also, there is going to be a survey that is going to pop up, well, evaluation that's going to pop up at the end of this webinar. Please fill it out. Let us know how we did tonight. If there's any webinars that you would like to see or a topic you would like for us to present, please feel free to put that on the evaluation and we will try to make that happen for you. Also, this webinar was recorded, so you will get a follow-up email along with the recording link so that you can go back and watch it and maybe pick up some information or some tidbits that you didn't catch the first time presentation was given. So we want to thank you guys for joining us this evening. It has definitely been a pleasure, and we will see you on the next webinar.
Thank you, ma'am. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Rebecca. And nice to meet you, Ashley.